Well, my name is Joseph De Cruz. I'm the Regional Environment Advisor for the Asia Pacific at the United Nations Development Programme. And we obviously work a lot on environment conservation issues, and a fora like these are actually a wonderful opportunity to get a sense of where we're going, to listen to the best people in the world articulate the kind of issues we need to address. Because what our job is to do is to try and translate that to the work we do on the ground in terms of actual on-the-ground human development. So this has been a wonderful opportunity to exchange ideas with some really, really scarily bright people. And it's that interaction amongst that crowd of people that's really been very valuable for me.
Yes, it was, and obviously you got to host the marine ecosystems kind of breakout session. What was that like? What were the ideas that came out of it? What did you take out of it, and how relevant was it to what you're doing?
I think the biggest takeout from that is that we as a community, and I guess those of us who work on environment and conservation issues are a community, we're starting to grapple with what used to be unthinkable, accepting the fact that conservation is no longer about trying to preserve a static view of the world, but to respond to the fact that changes are inevitable, and to see some very good people start to engage with the ideas of what that future could be like and what we can do to influence it in a positive way. So it was enriching, but I think it's sparked more questions we need to delve into rather than coming up with stunning answers. Well, first of all, on the issue of doom and gloom, I think it's important to recognize that we all deal in a doom and gloom business. So doom and gloom is not a surprise. And in some respects, actually, accepting the fact that we deal with a very, very severe crisis is a bit liberating. It certainly is for me, because it allows you to think in fairly radical terms about what we can do, and also to recognize the fact that we need to be actually, I hate to use the word, but empowering people who are right at the face of this to be able to respond to that. Some of the most valuable stuff that came out of the Marine group was when people commented on how we need to not forget those whose livelihoods and whose actual existence depend on marine systems. For many of us, it's more a question of, oh, do I get to eat fish for dinner tonight, and is there still a nice beach I can go to on holiday? For a lot of people in the world, it's a lot more important than that. And I think in dealing with these responses, it's been hugely valuable for us to recognize that we need to tailor the responses much more to those kinds of people for whom development is a critical issue, rather than for those of us who actually have the luxury to look at alternatives.
You flagged up an interesting point there, and I was thinking, as someone who's interested but is a layman, when the younger group on the end said end trawling, I mean, I think I'm quite draconian about it. That's what I would like to do.
Yes.
And I hadn't factored in, the sheer scale of people who actually rely on it. So it's not really practical, is it?
Well, okay, hang on. It may not be practical, but I actually love the fact that, as you said, the younger group, the caucus at the end of the Future Voices came out and said, that's really the solution. I think one of the challenges we face when you work in an area like this a lot is you're so used to seeing the constraints that it's very hard for you to sit there and actually say the blazingly obvious, which is that really, all the rest of it is kind of faffing around the edges if you don't deal with the fundamental issues. And as we unpacked, as we very briefly did, the question of what does it mean to say end trawling, you actually realize there's a lot more sophistication to that strategy than you'd first imagined.
Because I've always thought, I always say over here, so there's a halfway house.
Yeah.
It might mean the end of Western European fishing industry for 5 years, but why the hell haven't we got a moratorium for 5 years? Because we've got the other nutrition.
Yes.
So fine. So all right, in Indonesia, fine, you're living off it, like catching it locally.
Yes.
But why can't we do that? With that draconian kind of, I'm still being naive, but I still feel like that possibly is the only thing.
You're not being naive, I think. And again, let me unpack that a little bit, as we did in the sidebar discussion. Now, what happens if you end trawling? Okay. First of all, as I said earlier, what you need to do is to think in terms of the people whose food security depends on fishing. So you're talking about coastal communities, artisanal fisherfolk. Ending commercial longline trawling in the deep seas isn't actually going to affect them, provided you design the structures in the right way. What does ending trawling do for those of us who actually have the luxury of choice on our dinner plates? Okay, it probably means you're moving fish from being a cheap, undervalued commodity to being a luxury product. Is that a bad thing? If what we're facing is actually a scarcity of fish in the oceans, then if you're actually a believer in free markets, that's what you should be doing. By taking away an industry that's heavily subsidized and distorted by a whole lot of market protection, and allowing us to really value the fish that we have left in the ocean as a luxury product, is that really such a bad thing? Now, I'm not taking a position on this. I'm saying that, in fact, simply saying something like that, unfettered by the baggage of what you think is possible, actually opens up a lot of thinking about what might actually be an innovative approach. And that's the value of discussions like this. On Monday morning, I'll still have about 3 pages worth of notes and questions I need to digest. We've had so much of value thrown at us the last few days that it's going to take me a few days to process all of it. I guess if there was one thing that came out of this, it was the message that came out a couple of times about us having to present the issues we deal with on a day-to-day basis much more as opportunities. From the conservation side, we tend to always present the issues we deal with as doom and gloom and as thou shalt not. Thou shalt not overexploit, thou shalt not overharvest, thou shalt not encroach. And I think what we need to do is actually talk much more about the opportunities that come from a different view of using these resources. Not saying you shall not harvest fish anymore, but saying, can we reconfigure the fisheries market to make it a luxury product? Okay, and that comes back again to what our bright young colleagues are talking about in terms of saying something as simple as stop trawling. If you take that from a market point of view, you're saying actually, could we turn this from an undervalued commodity into a luxury product? And why not? Why should it continue to be a mass market commodity if we can't actually afford that on an ecological basis? It's that shift in thinking I think we're sparking here, and that's been very thought-provoking.